My name is Orkun Altintas. I'm the Director of Consulting for Aerospace and Defense, Europe, Middle East, Africa, South Asia at the advisory firm Frost Sullivan. So before we go into these areas specifically, the areas of sustainability, digitalization, and urban air mobility, and how airports are approaching these three important areas, I think it's good to start with an overview as to where we are at the moment with regards to recovery from COVID, as it was from pandemic to endemic. And it's actually quite useful to look at the statistics produced by Airports Council International, ACI, which is the main trade body for airports around the world. And they have some interesting statistics. For example, for 2019, ACI was estimating the global passenger traffic to be 9.8 billion passengers for the whole world. In fact, it was 9.2 billion in 2019. Now, how far are we from the actual 2019 levels at the moment in terms of global passenger traffic? In 2021, we achieved just short of 4.5 billion passengers for the whole world, 4.4 billion to be exact. That is actually 48% below 2019 levels. If we go into the specific regions, some of the regions, especially that I'm looking at, Middle East is down 62%. Is actual 2019 numbers, the numbers that were achieved. Again, Africa is doing slightly better, down 49% versus 2019, and South Asia is down 60%. Now, certain things come out here. For example, Middle East is actually one of the heavier affected regions, which is understandable because as we had expected from the beginning of the pandemic, it would be domestic travel that would be recovering first. It'll be quicker, and also tourism with business travel to be the slowest to recover. And for the majority of the regions and countries around the world, domestic travel started earlier within the country itself. Now, Middle East not really having a significant domestic market, with the possible exception of Saudi Arabia, is on international traffic, both in terms of passengers traveling to and from the region, but also passengers using the hubs in this region to connect between their destinations, whether they go from Europe to Asia Pacific or Latin America to Africa. So due to the restrictions, the disruption that we saw, the flights being stopped, airports stopped handling passengers, flights were cancelled right at the beginning of the pandemic. We've seen that affect the Middle East region significantly. And South Asia as well, for example, the key driver within South Asia is India, with the size of the travel market there. And in fact, India unfortunately went through a very rough period with COVID last year, and only recently have they reopened for international traffic. Domestic travel is still continuing, but all important international traffic has now become possible again. And keep in mind that India is actually an important market for the airline space in the Middle East, both in terms of local demand between these two regions, but also beyond the hubs in the region. You can understand how the Middle East got affected, but also how South Asia got affected as well. So South Asia was down 60% as opposed to 2019 levels. If you look at 2022, in 2019 or 2022, the projected number of passengers was just over 10 billion passengers, 10.2 billion. In fact, ACI is now expecting that they will be handling 6.5 billion, which means it's down 36% based on the forecast. You can see the movement is in the right direction, but it is a slow process. It will take time. And in fact, ACI is estimating that 2019 levels will be reached again by 2024 globally. So it will take time. This was the traffic side. There's also a revenue element, a very important revenue element. As a result of the disruption to services, revenues ultimately that impacted for airports around the world. And ACI estimates that compared to the project baseline, again in 2019, the global airport annual revenue shortfall is projected to be just over $83 billion for 21, and for this year, just short of $61 billion, 60.8 again to be more precise, for 2022. So again, the movement is in the right direction, but still there's a wide range between where we were in 2019 and where we are hoping to be and where we are at the moment. So it is a gradual process, but movement is at least in the positive direction. Just to add to this, the World Health Organization actually went on record to say that if we could vaccinate 70% of the world's population by the middle of this year, then that will be an important milestone, which means that as a world we will be out of the acute phase of the pandemic, and obviously that's going to drive economic recovery and recovery in traffic levels. The only problem is that we have the potential of further variations, and the Omicron variation that we have seen at the end of last year, while less deadly, was much more contagious. But thanks in part to the vaccination efforts that have been in place for the last year or so, it meant that we have bounced back relatively quickly. The other problem, unfortunately, is not all the regions are getting the same level of vaccination. Developing countries are behind in terms of vaccination rates. Again, in a global world, connected world, that is having a roadblock, that is creating a roadblock in the global recovery efforts. But nevertheless, they're expecting recovery by 2024. So obviously, digitalization is a key area at the moment, and to be honest, it was actually already well established before the pandemic. Airports, airlines, and other stakeholders within the ecosystem understood the importance of digitalization, transforming their business into a more digital business process, business itself. And obviously, the benefits coming from this is obvious. And way before the pandemic started, airlines and airports had looked into this, understanding its true value. What happened, obviously, with the onset of the pandemic, unfortunately, especially at the beginning, this major disruption changed a lot of priorities. Obviously, it became important to first and foremost figure out what's going on, how do we get back to normal, how do we survive, keeping in mind all the new restrictions coming in place for health and safety. So that, in effect, did have a disruption in the digitalization programs of many of the ecosystem partners. So for airports, that is no different. One thing that we had done as Frost Sullivan was we spoke to 50 airports just before the pandemic to really understand what their pain points were, what their priorities were in their digitalization journey. And for that, we looked at, as I said, 50 airports of different sizes, different tiers, but from also around the world. The general idea and some general highlights that came out is that for a majority of the airports, they were looking at the three main pain points, which were passenger flow management, airport asset management, but also integration of solutions for collaborative decision-making within the airport context itself. Now, you can appreciate that passenger flow management wasn't a priority right at the beginning of COVID, obviously with borders being stopped and flights being stopped. But eventually, as we go back to normality within the existing facilities of the airports and the terminals, these issues will become important again. In terms of what their priorities were, the key items that came out from our analysis was the need for increased digital connectivity. the optimization of commercial revenue at the airport, but also centralized operational control and integration. In order to achieve these, certain technologies have come forward. Cloud is very, very important, one of the top ones, but also increased use of mobile technologies. As we started to try to get passengers back, rebuild confidence. Some of this was, to a certain extent, enforced on the industry, onto the airports, and onto the airlines to really move ahead with some digital initiatives that would help adhere with the regulations. So what was that? Health and safety-wise, minimum contact, a end-to-end contactless journey, reducing the number of touch points in order to promote health and safety. So as well as cloud and mobile technologies, certain other areas are important, and these are the things that we are seeing airports investing in and will be investing in the future, such as big data, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, but also digital platforms themselves. Digitalisation overall does have significant positive impact on some operational KPIs. Specifically, we've seen in airport operations, in passenger processing within the terminal, ancillary revenues, but also sustainability itself. So I can say that migration to cloud and increased use of mobile technologies, the latter especially now as we're getting back on our path to recovery, is actually becoming very, very important. And there are many examples of airports having a lot of initiatives on those. Sustainability we can look at in greater detail as well. So sustainability arguably is the most critical challenge that we have, not just as the aviation industry, but as a world. Climate change is happening. Sustainability is important to safeguard our future generations. So this is something that is being taken very seriously by the aviation sector. Keep in mind that as within the aviation sector, we contribute to between 2.5 to 3% of global CO2 emissions. Airports have been looking into certain areas, and we can cover those under certain titles. One of the first areas that they're looking at is efficient terminal operations, and by efficient terminal operations we mean new terminal designs as well as improvements to existing infrastructure to really reduce energy usage and waste generation, with the ultimate aim of reducing the carbon footprint of the airport that is posed by its operations. That's on the terminal side. On the air side, there's improved usage of resource planning in order to optimize the resources required for airside operations, for the ground handlers, for the airlines, for the airport to deliver that service. And part of that is increased usage of electric handling equipment on airside. Obviously, with zero emissions, electric charging. This is having a major effect on the amount of pollution that an airport's operations creates. But that's the air side. There's also the land side. So we can look at the automated transportation. So the people movers, automated electric transportation, such as from the car parking area to the airports itself, to the terminals themselves, really to reduce emission and noise rather than the traditional methods of using transport buses or personal cars or others. Another area, and ultimately one of the important ones, is a reduction of noise pollution. So it's not only reducing the emissions, but also reducing noise levels, and that is being achieved over a couple of areas. One, increasing the new technology that is being available with aircraft, who not only have reduced noise levels, but also have significantly reduced CO2 emissions from their engines, but also coordinated planning between the authorities to really maximize the optimized routes in and out of the airport for aircraft coming in and going out. This is, I think, this is how we can highlight what is happening from the airport side. let's look at some examples, and we have examples from around the world. Some very innovative initiatives are in place. More or less, I think the airports around the world are looking at the same set of initiatives that are required to minimize their environmental effects. But some of them are concentrating in certain areas more, but eventually I think that is the way to go for all the airports. Dubai Airport, for example, here in the UAE, they're actively monitoring all electricity consuming sources within the terminal, and they're constantly optimizing in order to reduce energy usage. If we go to Denver in the United States, Denver has the largest solar farm of any airport in the United States, which is helping create the required energy for airport operations. Staying on the US side, Chicago O'Hare, as well as solar, they're using wind power extensively, but also they have an initiative in place of using green vehicles, and as well as providing the infrastructure for those vehicles to be charged airside itself. Coming over to Europe, we have Stockholm Arlanda Airport, which was in fact the first airport in Europe to achieve carbon neutrality. So one of the key ways they are managing this is the use of biofuels, for example, for heating of their terminals, of their hangars and relevant facilities. Zurich, again in Europe, they're not only using solar panels, but they're also using rainwater for the water requirements of their terminals and of the airport infrastructure. And another key one for Zurich, interestingly, is that they actually have a nature conservation zone, which is in between two of their runways. That is quite unique. Last but not least, Singapore, arguably one of the leaders in sustainability. The airport is, I think, fair to say, a destination in its own right. It's full of greeneries, plants, arboretums. But it's not only that, they're using, energy efficient motion sensors and lighting, as well as advanced waste and water management. So these are some of the areas where we see examples of airports really putting initiatives in place. But whichever airport we look at, there is a certain system in place which all of them are going around. So the three elements, which is environmental, social, economic, and these are supported by about three pillars. So one of them is the regulatory environment, the application of new regulatory rules to support this, the availability of technology, obviously, again, to help achieve these implementations. New technology is very important. But what is also key is the multi-stakeholder cooperation. So different stakeholders of the ecosystem are cooperating with each other. And let me give you a couple of examples on what I mean by that. One of them is the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program, again by ACI, where they have more than 350 airports accredited. And nearly 100 of these airports are expected to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2030. That's quite an important cross-industry initiative, and shows real drive and real purpose in achieving sustainability within airport operations. Another example is from the European Union and the European Commission's approval of a new initiative called OLGA, which is Holistic Green Airport. And the idea behind that is that through the cooperation of certain stakeholders, airports, technology providers, but also regulatory, they're trying to help mitigate the environmental impact of the aviation sector. So cross-industry stakeholder cooperation is of importance. The third area that we are looking into is what is referred to sometimes as AAM, Advanced Air Mobility, but as we refer to it, it's urban air mobility. So this is a growing sector for the last few years, especially recently. By urban air mobility, of course, we mean eVTOL aircraft, electrical vertical takeoff and landing, where there's taxis, cargo transportation, manned and unmanned. But the urban air mobility is something that is very, very fast developing at the moment, and it will become part of the transport infrastructure for any city, for any region. And of course, it will affect the airports. It has to be integrated into the airports itself. if we look at it from two aspects, in terms of how this affects the airport itself, the development of urban air mobility, I think we can summarize it at a very high level at two areas. One, airspace integration and coordination, and the second one is airport infrastructure. The airspace integration and coordination, everything to do with how do we integrate the planned commercial operations of UAM coming into the airport, whether it comes into landside or it comes into airside. The infrastructure that will be required to handle this from a airspace coordination perspective. This is key, of course. Regulatory rules have to be created, standard operating procedures have to be created where UAM can be integrated without affecting the existing operations at the airport, especially the runway operations. Then there's also the logistical part of the equation when the UAM aircraft actually come to the airport or depart from the airport. And that falls under the second point more, which is the airport infrastructure. Whether it comes landside or airside, there needs to be a physical space available, but also supporting infrastructure in place, whether it's maintenance, charging stations, but also local logistics, getting the arriving passengers or cargo from the eVTOL aircraft to the terminal, to the freighter terminal, or similarly landside, getting those passengers from the landing site across to the airport. So I think these are the two high-level areas we can look at in terms of how to integrate urban air mobility into airport operations. Now, regarding this, last year as Frost Sullivan, we did a very extensive study where we wanted to understand the perceived UAM operational readiness, and for that we looked at more than 100 cities around the world, and from that we have derived the top 10 cities which are most attractive and which are, we believe, most likely to introduce these UAM services. We have taken several approaches in this study that we have carried out. Firstly, we had a range of criteria to evaluate all of these cities, a total of 60 different criteria that we have applied to all of these cities. But also we spoke to the consumers and the industry stakeholders directly. So over a number of cities, we spoke to the stakeholders from the OEM side, service provider side, which is B2B, but we also spoke to the public, the potential customers who will be using these services, which is B2C, really to understand their perception of UAM, their expectations, their preferences. Would they use UAM? For what purposes would they use it? How often would they use it? How much would they be willing to pay? Do they have any safety concerns? We covered really a myriad of different areas, and from that we derived it down to 10 cities. In our analysis, we actually found out that London is the most attractive in terms of preparations, readiness, but also as a result of the extensive analysis that we have done. But we actually think that Dubai will be the first city in the world to start offering commercial UAM services. So both of these are, of course, in the top 10 cities that we think are very likely to be introducing UAM. But of course, it's not going to stop at these top 10 cities. As the sector develops, we're going to see this across the globe and obviously being integrated into airport operations. Just to give you an idea, based on our projections, the overall serviceable addressable markets, the SAM as we call it, across intercity and intracity journey types is estimated to generate $2.7 trillion in both OEM and operation services revenues by 2040. Furthermore, again by 2040, the cumulative consumer demand will translate into an estimated need for 2.5 million air taxi platforms across various vehicle types, single-seater, dual-seater, four-seater. So this is a major area that is seeing a lot of growth at the moment. And again, if you look into the examples of what certain airports are doing at the moment, and if you concentrate from the airport side, one example is Fraport, which is a leading global airport management company, and of course Frankfurt Main Airport with its flagship operation. They have an initiative in place where they're cooperating with Volocopter, a eVTOL OEM. It's also a German company, and they're actually looking into the design of electric multi-rotor helicopters, air taxis specifically, and really with the whole idea that they'll be able to start offering the support UAM services, and also Frankfurt Main, but also addressing the Rhine-Main of Frankfurt. So just like you have your trams, trains, buses, cars, UAM eVTOLs will be so there's already a study happening. Another example, for example, is the ADP Airport, the French airport operator, and they actually have a partnership with Skyports, where they're looking at building Europe's first vertiport with an effort to obviously start offering commercial UAM services around 2024, which is also the date for the Olympics, which is being held in Paris. So there's a lot of preparation happening at the moment. There's a lot of cross-industry cooperation between the airport operators, between OEMs, regulatory authorities, to really prepare for the introduction of UAM and integrating it safely within the existing transport network. Please join us at the Global Airports Leaders Forum, co-located at the airport show in Dubai between 15th and 17th of May, where we will be discussing these topics in greater detail, including a specific panel that I will have the pleasure and honor to moderate, which is titled Making Innovations in Design, Ambience and Operations a Key Element of the Airport Development Strategy, a panel which will have a number of valued cross-industry participants, including airport operators, airport retailing, but also solution providers, and also airport internal design elements involved as well. So we will get a chance to see and get the inputs of these different perspectives with regards to how we make innovations in design, ambience, and operations as part of our airport development strategy.